a reporter called and said, "Would you have any interesting stories?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, actually." I said, "Red, he shows up on set on time. He knows his lines. He hits all his marks. He's amazing. I love working with him. Yellow is the biggest jerk in the world. He can't get his act together. He's got a bad attitude.
Never knows his lines.
No.
Never hits his mark.
Hot mess. And she goes, "You're kidding me." And I was like, "I absolutely am kidding you. They don't exist." I took the job at Leah Burnett as the CCO, and there were no female CCOs in any known agency in America at the time. I was like, if I get this wrong, there'll never be any more CCOs.
You're going to put feminism back by 50 years.
I know, like, oh, Lordy. There's nothing heroic about failing alone. So if you start to feel like you're not getting your way, or things are going awry, or you're getting bullied by the client or whatever, just make the phone call. We can get in a car and we can be there. Then I always felt that younger people needed to feel that responsibility of being out there on their own, but to also know if you're losing control, call.
Yeah.
The next thing I know, we had too much work. And so I was like, "Gerry, I've got to do this radio campaign for this brand called Allsport at Pepsi." He wrote this campaign with Jim Belushi playing a basketball, and they were hilarious. The client loves them. And he goes, "So what do we do?" I said, "You go make them." And he goes, "Are you coming with me?" I'm like, "No, you wrote it."
She's flexing. Here we go.
Welcome to Second Wind. We're your hosts, Kerrie Finch and Gully Flowers. Today, we're talking to Susan Credle. Over a career spanning decades, she has helped shape some of the world's most influential brands, holding senior creative roles at agencies including BBDO, Leah Burnett, and FCB. It's great to have you here. What first drew you into the industry, and what's kept you in it?
I was trying to find a career where I could be amongst creative people, not necessarily be the creative, but be in a place where creativity sat at the heart, and I actually could make some money. Or
Did
it
it
looked
work?
like potentially. Yeah, it worked out fine. But I actually I was much more interested in drama and theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I watched some of my, friends that were going down that path or were a couple of years ahead of me at university, and it looked tough.
So what, you wanted to act, or you wanted to be behind the scenes?
I wanted to act.
Okay.
No, I wanted to act. I also like directing.
Yeah.
I found myself in a lot of those sort of situations coming along. But in the end, I really, when you looked at the statistics,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. And I had done a lot of theater, growing up, and it's rough, even as a kid, you go to the theater at 4 p.m, you finish at midnight.
Yeah.
I found myself sleeping under makeup tables and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for that.
Is advertising any different?
No, I have slept on many editing floors waiting to see
Under many a makeup table. Yeah.
Yes.
In terms of, the drama and wanting to act and how that kind of bled into your career and what it taught you, how did that shape your creative instincts back in the day?
I've always seen brands as roles. So I think we confuse, like, what's a brand? It's like a brand to me is a total of a feeling that you get when you hear a name. The product or the service is one way to define the brand, but it adds up. But so what is the brand? What is this brand's personality? How would it behave? How would it feel? And that's sort of what you do when you're, looking at a role, to play a role. And so by understanding the brand as a character, I think you're not trying to do the creative first. You're trying to understand how the brand needs to show up and how it would respond. And to me, that's a lot of what we have to do, is always honor the brand, not just honor a cool idea.
Was there a moment when you felt like those two worlds collide and that you felt like, oh, okay, this is it. This is the crossover moment. This is how, I'm learning from one discipline to another?
Yeah, I think M&M's actually, because those characters don't exist in the real world. So they were showing a spot in Australia on Australia's funniest ads or whatever. And a reporter called and said, "Would you have any interesting stories?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, actually." I said, "Red, he shows up on set on time. He knows his lines. He hits all his marks. He's amazing. I love working with him. Yellow is the biggest jerk in the world. He can't get his act together. He's got a bad attitude.
Never knows his lines.
No,
Never
just
hits his mark.
hot mess. And she goes, "You're kidding me." And I was like, "I absolutely am kidding you. They don't exist." But what was really interesting is when Steve Rudder and I got the assignment to work on M&Ms, it was kind of a kid brand and cartoony. And the agency before had started to kind of grow them up and make them a little more sophisticated. But we were like, I think they could be a lot more. And I think we were really fortunate because Paul Michaels, who was the CMO at the time, he allowed us to take them places that at the time I didn't understand, because we were writing some pretty, if you go back, their adult humor, there's a lot of subtext and a lot of the writing that you don't really get, immediately. And I think what he was realizing is that if the characters were not more mature and for a more mature audience, that they could be threatened as being subject, trying to get children to seduce children into the brand. And I think we see where, all of this is gone. It's like we actually stopped advertising to children in the 90s. Like we didn't buy any media that was under a teen, which I thought was really responsible of the company. But I think that that's why we were allowed to take them to a much more interesting level, is because the audience, the shift of the focus on the audience mattered. And I grew up with, the dip in the pool, the chocolate pool and the candy shower, and it was always to kids.
Okay.
Even the way they wrote it, it was very childish. And the shift, which I said started to happen before we were put on the account, but I think that's why we were allowed. And what it taught me was respect your audience and, don't write down to them, write up, they don't have to get everything. But I think you felt it. And I think that's why they became kind of loved at the time, is that you didn't expect them to be what we said when we developed them, is that one, if we did our job right, you would kind of think you could meet them. Like that they might just walk in. So that was, it
Just
meant
like
a
the
lot when that
reporter.
Australian journalist asked,
Yeah.
oh my. Yeah. And we wanted them to be flawed. It's like we said they work for M&Ms, and sometimes they like their job. Sometimes they don't like their job. Sometimes they're frustrated, So I remember there was one ad we wrote where they went in to demand a raise because they said, we do everything. You've got stores, we're doing toys, everything. It's like, it's time. We don't just do commercials every once in a while. And the boss says, "Great, what are you making now?" And they're like, "Nothing." And he goes, "I'll double it." And they're like, "Yes." And then they get out the door and it's like, oh, crap.
At what point did you first work with Gerry, Mr. Graf? Was he like a young, strapping young chap?
Yeah, he's told this story before, so I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
He had just started in advertising. I think he came from Wells Rich Green, and he was a junior writer, and he sat in a little cubicle beside my office, and he was in a different group. And I thought he was hilarious and so talented, and his group wasn't really using him. And my partner and I, Steve Rudder, we never really officially became creative directors or associate creative directors or even a group. We just started we started getting business and getting tight with clients on these small businesses that nobody wanted to work on. And the next thing I know, we had too much work. And so I was like, "Gerry, I've got to do this radio campaign for this brand called Allstate at Pepsi. And I'm not the best at radio, especially when I think it should be funny. And I think you could do it." And he was like, "Okay, give me the brief." And he wrote this campaign with Jim Belushi playing a basketball, and they were hilarious. And he's like, I said, "Well, the client loves them." And he goes, "So what do we do?" I said, "You go make them." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I was like, "You go to LA and work with a radio studio and you make your artwork." He goes, "Are you coming with me?" I'm like, "No, you wrote it." And, the next thing I know, he's, a wonderkin and doing amazing things. And I think that's when we started working with him on M&Ms, and he helped with the first campaign out of the gate, which was a blessing because his humor is so good. And and then he started getting noticed by everybody, and the rest is Gerry Graf's rise to incredible fame.
I'm curious about Paul because that ability of a CMO to lead and inspire creatives is incredibly powerful, but it's not something I see as much now. The idea of like creativity and its impact on business is a little bit mushy these days, right? With like Facebook telling us or Meta telling us, just connect your bank account and we'll use the computers to sell everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Are there amazing CMOs or experiences or speeches by CMOs that have really driven you to do really powerful, impactful work? Or like, how do you see that role as somebody who's been a creative in so many incredible sort of moments?
Well, we always say, I mean, when we were trying to turn FCB around, which started in like 2014, Carter Murray started committing to possibly using creative to be successful in advertising, which is not
shocking.
I can't even believe I said that. Like, what a novel idea.
Yeah. And as early as 2014 as well.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I grew up at BBDO under Phil Dusenberry, and I will tell you that creativity made money. So I never doubted, but we also were putting the most creative ideas in front of the biggest audience of people. And today, I think so many of our best creative ideas go to the smallest audience of people.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest issue with what we're facing today is populist and award-winning are super far away from each other. And I would like to see populist work and award-winning work come back together.
And when do you think that changed? You know, where do you see that? Because you must have quite a good overview.
Case studies.
What do you mean?
Case studies. When you just had to put a film up or a print ad or an outdoor board with no explanation except here it is.
And now the case study is the most important deliverable.
Yeah.
Shh.
The case studies.
Steady.
Interesting. So an award show devoid of any context or preamble around the work would be potentially bringing us back to this sort of more like pure populist.
Yeah, I think the two things that were a problem were the amount of media put behind a piece of work. So, you know, there was the joke before case studies started. It was like, oh, it ran in a supermarket circular in a town in upstate New York.
Yeah.
That was a problem, which is that how do we, if you didn't have a good media buy, it wasn't going to be populist, right? It was just going to be, you know, creative for creative sake. Inspiration, I guess. And so that was the big issue we faced in the 80s and 90s is no media behind the work. Even though the work was beautiful, it was like, but it didn't really run. And then we started this wonderful term that I can't stand, earned media.
Yeah. Okay.
Everything's earned media. Even if I buy it, you know, if I put nothing into media that's of any interest, then it doesn't earn me more than the investment I made. If I put something brilliant into media, then I get earned media on top of that. And in fact, I was asking a client a while back, I said, I don't get it. I said, when you don't have any media, when you haven't bought any media, you believe in the power of creativity. I mean, you will preach it from the hilltops. But the minute you buy media, which says to me that you think that media's got value and is important enough to pay for it, you put something that barely gets any interest into it. It makes no sense to me. I would think if you were buying something, you want to put your best foot forward, which would be really great creative that earns you exponentially more.
And what did this client say?
Oh, God, I never thought about it that way.
Did they change?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Baby steps.
I would say that the creative product that is going out to the masses and big media buys is getting better.
So I never thought about it like this, that there had to be almost like a moment when case studies became important. But what changed in the industry that made case studies important?
Tech and media. It started, I think, with showing how the creative idea system worked. So we ran something here, then it did this, then it pushed to here. You know, so it was this. You know, there was a system to it that if you didn't understand it, you wouldn't understand how creative this idea is.
It's and like then smart media, like strategic use of different media.
Yeah, and
channels.
sort of like but also creative. It wasn't
Yeah.
like it was just media use, but it's like we launched this thing here, and then this got picked up, and then it
Yeah.
became this.
Yeah.
You know, so it couldn't
We've
just
got to
be,
explain the work, guys. Just hold,
Right.
give us a second. I need to make a little film to explain to you how good this work is.
I remember several times being on juries and going, okay, I get what you were trying to do, but can I see the speech that you sent out into the world
Yeah.
that was a part of this system? And they were like,
So it was your fault. Case studies came from you.
no, I was watching a case study and I wanted
Oh.
to know what the creative was
Yeah.
Got
that
it.
was doing all this. And they were like, well, we don't really want to show you that. It's
Oh,
like,
because
why?
that
Because
is
the grade is not
interesting.
very good.
This
But
is
boy,
the first time I've heard anybody talking about killing the case study, and I
Yeah.
think it's genius.
I think it's brilliant.
I'm like, why don't they do that?
Well,
Let the
Well,
work.
they should absolutely. There have been conversations about when and how you should use, like a print ad that comes with a case study. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Put a little, if you have to go, this print ad showed up in places that, you know, people gathered when birds were flying overhead.
Yeah.
Fine, say that. But don't put some, you know, Coldplay song over birds flying, you know, and then I see people looking
Someone's
at the thing.
crying,
Yeah.
Yeah.
looking at the ad.
And then you have to employ a Brit to voice over it.
Yes.
But you know, we're human beings and we fall for the thing. And I was like, well, if we're going to award the case study, maybe we should be running the case study.
Yeah. I do
Because the
think you
case
made a
study is more
point, though.
powerful than the work.
I do think
Huh?
you made a point, though, which is, you know, case studies probably did come about partly because of culture. India got involved, Georgia got involved, Latvia got involved instead of just the UK and America. You know, that
Right,
you
and so that you needed to understand.
contextualize it.
But
Yeah.
you still could, you could still just say culturally here, this is this. What we
Yeah.
realized is that case studies are emotional. And if you make a beautiful case
Yeah.
study,
Yeah.
you jump
You can
up to
swing. You can swing it. Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
And when I was in college taking a copywriting class, the professor, John Sweeney, who's amazing and is a part of a lot of cool creatives' lives, Margaret Johnson, Stacey Wall, there's two. But John would say that what we do is subjective. And he said, so there will be one class A that the class votes on, and whatever the class likes the most gets the A. In the first semester, I got the A every time because I would go up there and explain why my ad was so brilliant.
Okay.
The second semester, he said, you just have to put your ad on the board and you can't talk about it.
Ooh.
I never got the A again. So.
But
Well, you
that
had
is
very good
really- that's the-
persuasion
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's the power of persuasion there. Yeah.
But it was a good lesson. And, you know, and we hear it, but
Huh.
John was the first one to tell me, is like, you can't follow your ad around and explain why it's so brilliant.
to every single person that's watching. Yeah.
And that's why I don't like case studies. It's like,
They bought paid media, they guaranteed to watch it. They have to.
it doesn't matter. Still, if they don't
paid.
get it or if they don't feel anything. So, yeah, it's
But
an
clearly
interesting time.
Clearly you've got a gift for persuasion, and you know that, like, it's such an interesting story to tell, that like when you can talk about it, you know, first of all, we're going to kill the case study. I love that. But then second, it's like you've just shown us how important it is to talk about, or how persuasive it can be to talk about the work.
Oh, absolutely. And I think when there was a hilarious writer at BBDO and even a more hilarious performer, and he would end up selling his work all the time. The sad part is he was funnier than the work. And so when he would go to make it, we're like, I wasn't as good as he was the presentation.
Yeah. At which point you should just be filming him and putting that out on TV.
Yeah. But it is. And I worry about it sometimes of like, I never tried to oversell a client on an idea, or, well, clients might hear this and go, yes, she did. But I really did want to say, if you get it, you get it. But if you don't, if I have to ever explain this, we're in trouble, and the truth will come out, you know, at some point, truth. And our job is not to get a piece of work sold. Our job is to make a great piece of work.
Yeah, that people buy into, that people, you know, want to step towards and want to be part of, I guess.
I was giving a talk. I was talking last week to an audience, and you look back in your journey, I would be like, well, what's good work? You know, and at first I started with, well, something that stands out, something that people remember and they talk about. Well, that's good. That's not a bad thing. But then I was like, my first decade in, that's all I wanted to do is create things that people would talk about or notice. Then I was like, oh no, I want to start building brands. So I don't want to just do a piece of work. I want it to add up to something bigger. And that was probably the M&Ms when we said, why can't we just take these 6 colors and develop a comedic ensemble? And I remember Paul Michaels said, Susan, I don't have enough money to develop 2 characters, much less 6. And I was like, yeah, but over 10 years we could do it, and
Wow.
yeah, and that was in 1996. And it was true. It's because I was looking at, Steve and I were looking at it like a sitcom.
Yes.
And it was like, we'll start with red and yellow. And when they need refreshing or we need a different storyline, we'll figure out which character should come in next. So that it won't get worn out.
Who's your favorite M&M character? Which color do you like the best?
Crispy was hilarious to write for because,
Why?
well, Crispy's the orange M&M, and it was supposed to be a female comedic character, sort of like Lucille Ball.
Okay.
But then when the Crispy form was coming out, and it was a light product, and we were like, of all the characters that would worry about being eaten, Crispy would probably be the most scared because you can eat him by the handfuls. So we decided we shifted up the character to be neurotic, which is another classic, character in an ensemble, is that nervous, oh my God, everything's going to go wrong, whatever. And the writing on that when we launched Crispy was just so much fun because he was just terrified all the time. We had like a writer's room, so everybody was helping each other get to the best. We launched it with Patrick Warburton comes in and the Crispy M&M is sitting on the sofa. And he goes, so you're the new Crispy M&M, chocolate, crispy inside. Sounds good. And Crispy sort of panics and falls on the floor. And he goes, you can't eat a candy that fell on the floor. and he goes, who says? He goes, it's a rule. And he's like, whose rule? It's like, ah! And that was the end of it. And it was really interesting because it was played very deadpan. And I remember we were showing it to the first client, and we had a great relationship with all the clients at Mars at the time on M's. And we had this rule that we didn't make changes to work after the first and second, tiers had seen the work. We would take their feedback, we would talk to them about it, and then we would just go up the ladder in that same day, so that we didn't create Frankensteins,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
So we showed it, and it was very, very deadpan. And the client said, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I was like, well, what did you... He was like, I wanted him to be panicked and screaming versus just like, oh God, sort of character. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, I don't think that would have been good. I think it would have been annoying. I think he's much better, just so deadpan. And he said, well, I hear you, but this is just how I feel. So when we show it to Paul, I don't think I can support it. And I was like, that's fair. I said, that's absolutely fair. And if we're really wrong, they're animated characters, we'll go back in and we'll fix this, We show it to Paul. He goes, well, that's our Super Bowl spot.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I looked at the other client. I said, would you, I mean.
You got to support this?
Yes, I love it. It's fine.
Oh my God.
But I love that we had that kind of relationship. And I actually wasn't asking him to make fun of him. I really was.
No.
Like,
You would, yeah.
If this isn't sitting right with you, we'll still entertain it. And he was like, no.
Yeah. We've made a decision. Let's go.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because you talk about it as sort of a personal opinion there, and I think a lot of times, because I used to be a suit, and we would try and say like, it doesn't really matter what you think. What matters is this on brief? Do we think it achieves the goal? And I think it's one of those things that's really hard to do because your client's sort of the all-knowing, and obviously having someone like Paul in you feel maybe pretty confident going in there. But I think I'm curious what you've learned about like trying to get great work out of clients when, sometimes the feedback you get will lead you down a path that you just know is not going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I loved about M&Ms is the first project we did was a billboard in Atlanta, and it took us a month to get through the ranks.
Oh,
and what I realized is they were terrified of Paul.
Right.
And so I talked to Paul and I said, I think that we're wasting a lot of time with people trying to guess what you want to see. How do you feel about this? Is that when we come to present an idea, we'll start at the beginning with the junior clients. They'll get their feedback. Then we'll go to the next level. The next level.
We won't change. We're not going to change the creative.
We won't change, but they'll have a time to think about what they want to say. I mean, I think it's a horrible thing to throw young people into a room and go, what do you think? Do you love it? Do you like it? Do you want, it's like, I don't know. I wake up in the next morning and go, oh, I don't think I like it as much as I liked it yesterday.
Well, they're between a rock and a hard place, right?
And then they're not thinking about what's right for the brand. They're thinking about what their boss will buy.
Yeah.
Which is not what you want to be
They don't really know what they think.
No, exactly. And it's all part of the learning curve as well if you're junior as well, isn't it?
Right.
I mean,
they're like my timesheets. I need to do my timesheets, I think.
So we were like, okay, and by the end of the day, we'll meet with Paul, and Paul, they'll have had time to think about how they reacted, whatever, and then they'll watch Paul react and see, they'll learn.
Yeah.
And Paul was like, that sounds like a really great idea. And it, eventually Paul didn't have to be in every meeting in every room because his people were watching him react to work, and were thinking about how they had reacted to it earlier. And by the way, the other thing is that I haven't run into a lot of Pauls in my career. The other thing, and I talk about this a lot, is belief. Like when we walked in there, Steve Rudder and I were young in the scheme of things at BBDO, and we go to meet Paul, and the first thing he says is, "Can you believe I have BBDO working on the Mars business?" Because at the time BBDO was Pepsi. It was, it was creating culture, whatever. He was like, I cannot believe it. I am so excited. And I remember I looked back, I was like, yeah, you don't have BBDO. You have Steve and I.
Yeah.
Or Steve and me. You have us. But he believed in us. I think he believed in us more than we believed in ourselves. And we wanted to make him proud. We wanted to do right by him, because of how much he believed in us. And when we, he was a confidence builder, and he wasn't afraid. He took chances. He also, I think at the time he had never been married. He didn't have children. He had a pretty big job. And so he didn't come to work in fear.
Yeah. And that's the thing, isn't it? You were learning from a client who was ballsy at the time and knew his own mind, let's put it that way. Yeah. How do you potentially educate or persuade clients who are more risk averse these days?
Some people would disagree with this, but I think strategically sound decisions make risk go. If we know what we're trying to say and who we're trying to say it to, or what we're trying to get to, and we believe in that, then how we say it, suddenly the conversation gets a lot less risky. I also think strategy should be flexible enough to change. I know so many times we'll get a brief and then we'll start tearing it apart and playing with it. And if creativity doesn't come out of a brief fairly easily, I don't mean to say easily, but if you're not excited by it, you kind of probably are strategically off a little bit. And I don't think there's anything wrong with going back and saying, I have this saying, if you're in the diamond business and you find emeralds, go into the emerald business. Don't just go, oh, damn, we're looking for diamonds.
Yeah, these are rubbish.
We got to be a little looser. And that's the problem with a lot of data and strategy that's stuck. I think strategy and creative dance together.
That's
when I was growing up, there were no planners or strategists. We had research, but no strategy and planning. So that was the beginning of where creative started. Is what's going on in culture. Where does this product fit? How would we, what are people feeling? So it started in a much more strategic plannery world.
Yeah.
And then we got to the part where it's like, crap, now how do we make this interesting to people?
Yeah. What does that look like inside a company, strategy and creative dancing together?
Well, at FCB, our planners sat in the room with the creatives and the creatives sat in the room with the planners. And it was not a baton pass. It was a back and forth. And then if we found, if a creative idea started getting exciting, but it didn't sit right where we had started, we'd go interrogate it through a strategic, effort to look and see, does this hold water? Because usually, I was telling somebody the other day, what's the best data in the world is your heart, your head, and your gut. And that's human. I mean, I love it when people are like, the young people are having a problem with social media. It's like everybody's having a problem with social media. It doesn't belong to young people.
Look around.
Yeah. And it's at 62 and a half, flying by. I don't feel much different than I did in my 20s. I mean, and I think this targeted audiences is a big mistake. I mean, I think that.
Well, it's bad targeting, right? It's just like, you're a generation, here's what you believe.
Yeah, it's like, no, we are a human race, and here's what we're experiencing. And there's more, we called it out of Chicago, upstream inclusion, which is that maybe you start speaking to a certain audience about something, but if it's important enough to that audience, it's probably going to bubble up and go across more than what you intended, if you will allow it. And that's where we get into more of a mass market idea. And the mass market idea leads to a brand. A brand cannot be a strong brand if people don't share in their knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And so, so I just think that, you buy a brand because hopefully you believe in it, you trust in it, it means something to you, but it also helps you tell your story. So if you don't know what I believe about the brand and you believe something different, that's a psychotic brand.
Yeah.
Brands are meant to be shared. And you can like them or not like them, but you should have a shared understanding of them. But you don't have to like a brand, and I don't care if you buy the brand, but you need to know it. So like an example of, like, if I buy a Volvo and I know that the first thing people think is people that drive Volvos value safety, they're probably a little more responsible, they're not as wild. Okay, that's what this car says about me. If I'm a grandmother taking care of a newborn, maybe my daughter-in-law kind of feels a little bit better about me being in charge of the baby because of the car I chose, because it says something about me. So it's much more, I think brands are very complex and interesting. But that brand is only half the value if they're only talking to me.
Tell us about insurance, because I think I like what you said about the best data is your heart, your head, and your gut. Is that what your heart, your head, and your gut? Because we talked to Joe Shoesmith about Mayhem. And I'd just love to hear it. I think from a category perspective, it's sort of similar to the M&Ms and the candy, in that, you've sort of created a new way to talk about this type of product or this industry. And I just remember Mayhem being like, how the did they sell this in? It's like, we're going to show all the craziest
I'm
shit.
never going to tell you how we sold it in, because only two people know. Three people know.
Why is it such a state secret?
Well, then I can't tell you.
Oh, okay. Shh, just say it quietly.
Joe already told us.
And nobody knows. Joe wouldn't know.
Okay.
Nobody knows. Well, first of all, again, you talk about brave or whatever. I love that campaign mainly because it's so strategic. And this is also going to define why a targeted idea is bigger than the target. Because that was meant to be for young people who didn't think that they needed insurance, because in their mindset, it's like the only time you need insurance is if your house burns down or you total your car. And half of them barely have a car. They have an apartment, whatever. They just don't think
that they own a house. Yeah,
but they don't think that they have anything of that much value to protect. Because catastrophes are not going to happen to them. And I think it's a young people's, it's a shared mindset of everybody. It's a youth
mindset, isn't it?
But yeah, and probably most of us don't walk around thinking today I'm going to get in my car and die. It's like we are, as human beings, are not wired to think about catastrophe. But this particular evidence showed that they're just not even thinking about insurances for them. And so it was a layup of a brief, which was, from a strategic standpoint, was there's all these everyday little things that happen that you need to be protected from. So not the big crazy stuff, but just little things that just go wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it was Charlie Wickman and Jeannie Caggiano were the creative directors of that. And Jeannie really loved the idea. I was terrified because I was like, we're going to personify things. This could go terribly wrong.
And how was the idea talked about at that stage? A character and little
Yeah,
things
it's
turn
it's like,
into
a person is gonna personify something that could hit the fan.
yeah.
And there's thousands of them. As I think it was supposed to be a 3-month campaign in 2010, and it's still going. Did do some like just research with audiences just to say, do you like this? Do you understand it? Do you get it? And that came back really strong, which I think is just a confidence builder. It's like people like
Yeah.
it. People think it's funny.
7 people in Iowa really like this
They
in a
laughed.
conference room when we
They
talked to
related.
them
I don't
about
even know
it.
if they laughed. They understood that the
Yeah.
person was playing a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
They got personification.
And
then
the good brief, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but the good brief, was that something the agency wrote, or was it like a good client brief that you
I
felt
think it
was
was a
like really-
client agency. That relationship was really Lisa Cochran was the day-to-day client on that, and she had come from Ogilvy, so she was an agency
Nice.
person. She's married to Kerrie Cochran, who is an incredible artist, but was an art director at Ogilvy. So she grew up steeped in creativity and love of creativity. It was interesting working with her because she's so passionate. A client that came from a creative agency, understood creativity, and wanted great creative. And there are two things that happened with that is the creatives came in to show me the casting. And I try not to get way too involved. When you're a CCO, you shouldn't be all over all the ideas. You should give people a lot of room to own what they're making and feel like they're making decisions without me hovering.
breaking down the
Yeah,
necks, right?
micromanaging. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was actually the first campaign since I took the job at Leah Burnett as the CCO, and there were no female CCOs in any known agency in America at the time. And so
Well, that's amazing. Shout out to you for starters.
Well, I mean, the pressure, I was like, if I get this wrong, there'll never be
Yeah.
You're
any
gonna
more.
put you're gonna
We're
put
done.
you're gonna put feminism back by 50 years.
I know, like, oh Lordy. And then I kept telling myself, it's like, don't let the pressure hurt you. Don't let the pressure,
Yeah, it's really
don't let
difficult 'cause-
that's your pressure. So I'm rolling with it. Everything's good. I see the passion in the creatives. And again, belief. They believed in it. They loved it. I'm like, okay, I have some questions, but whatever. And I've always told my teams, I'm like, look, on any given day, you're as creative or more creative than I am. I mean, we're all, it's not like a hierarchy that it's,
Yeah.
you suddenly don't get a title and then all of a sudden you're more creative. And I said, the only time I really ask that you pay attention is if I get chill bumps and get excited or if I want to throw up. And those are the only times that you should listen to me. And so they showed me the casting and I said, remember that rule about chill bumps and throwing up? I'm going to go vomit.
And they're like, in a good way.
Yeah, come on. And I said, we can't shoot this. I was like, it's just too weird of a part we have to have a great actor. And these guys are creepy. And they're not going to be like,
They went too into the idea.
They just it's such, you take for granted the performance. It is a tough thing to pull off.
Yes, absolutely.
To be dark enough to be curious and interesting, but not to be creepy.
Yeah.
And Matt Miller, who was a junior creative at the time, I guess he had written the original scripts and he was in the room, which is important to have. This is a good lesson. And wherever the idea came from, have that person in the room. And he goes, well, when I was writing it, I had this guy, Dean Winters in my head. And he had just started to be interesting. He was on 30 Rock and there was one other show, but he was not a known actor at the time, but he was really good. And so we were like, well, let's call him and see if he would audition. And he was interested, but he had just come off some health issues that were also fascinating. And he auditioned. I think Patrick Warburton auditioned. I had worked with Patrick a few times and I knew he could do dark humor in an affable way. And it was really interesting because the client, I think, liked Patrick a little more, and the agency was recommending Dean. And the CMO at the time said, look, when it's a strategic call, the edge goes to the client. When it's a creative call and an actor, the edge goes to the agency.
Good rule.
And not like nobody hated him. It was just, we would like this one maybe more. And I thought it was really cool that he he said, this is, if we don't have a huge point of view of like that this person is not going to work, we should listen to the agency.
Oh,
And
interesting.
it was
Gotta
and
love
it was
that.
the right call. I
Yeah.
love Patrick. And but I would say that probably the coolest part of the call is he really wasn't known
At
as
the
much as
time,
Patrick
yeah.
was. Yeah, Warburton had gotten pretty popular, and good for him. But so it was a great call. And again, the lesson was the junior in the room, you know, had that voice in his head. He didn't know to ask for that actor. My feeling was that if we had gone with the other actors, I would have been fired and the campaign would have
What?
lasted
And
about
women would have been put back
Another 50
50
years.
No, because we tend to cycle. Like when I got into the business, I thought women were really welcome because I was like, well, there's Mary Wells, there's Yvonne
I can
Smith,
name
there's
3.
Nancy
Yeah.
Rice, there's you know, I was like, there's Penny Hockey. I was like, this place loves women. And then it's like, oh, okay, now there are no women with names on the door. And then, you know, then it comes again. And that's why I think we have to watch out, especially in America. We've got this diversity thing
Yeah.
that's sort of being, you know, taken back. And it doesn't take very long to lose, you know,
Yeah.
what you've gained. And
Progress.
I'm old enough to have seen it happen at least twice.
So tell us a bit about that, you know, so, you know, because like you say, often things like this are cyclical somewhat, which is bonkers when it comes to something like diversity and inclusion, but there we go. You know, but where has the industry, do you think, you know, really made some progress, and where are we just falling short or going backwards?
In the last 20 years, I mean, I look at like women leading at the top, like Kate Stanners and Liz Taylor and Colleen Corsi and Shaka Sabani. I mean, you know, there's lots, and you know, Nancy Crimi Lamana, Lisa Wall. It's just like there's lots of I can, you know, but I will tell you, as many as I can name, we could a year from now not have that list anymore.
Yeah.
It's just so fragile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But what? I
diversity.
mean, this is, I find it bonkers, you know, that it is so fragile.
I think because some of it, I always said, is it's lazy, and not and I don't mean it in such a derogatory way, but it's like, oh, if I have friends that are like me and I know they're really good, I'm like, hey, you should call so and so. They're amazing. I
Yeah.
know they would love to come over. And whether we like it or not, the groups that hang out together tend to help each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's male female, sometimes that's
Yeah.
you know, a group that has something in common. Sometimes it's a country,
Yeah.
you know, but you just kind of go, oh, my network, I know these people.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit more time. And by the way, you can get duped when you don't know someone that knows someone. And this isn't a new phenomenon. I remember there's an art director. This was in the 80s, and he was interviewing somebody. And the guy came in with a portfolio, and it had like most of the portfolio was the interviewer's work.
Ah!
And this is hilarious. He goes, these are all my ads. And he goes, they're laminated in your portfolio. He goes, yeah, I like them.
Oh my God, that's outrageous. So he was bringing in work that he liked, not that he
This
did.
is kind of work I'd like to do, which I thought was very flattering to the creative director.
And
Like,
probably
wow,
a
all
very
my
smart
ads.
move.
But I don't think he did it on purpose. I think he just thought, I'm going to laminate things I like and I want to do. And this is the kind of work I'd like to do.
Oh my
This
God.
is my book.
Yeah,
I
this is
made
my,
of yours.
this is my
seen
book of
you-
love.
Of love. Yeah, this is my ambition book, not my portfolio. Not work I've done.
Oh my
I thought it was
God.
kind of charming, though.
Well, charming.
And I mean, I have also seen people that, like, I had some creatives that wanted to be credited on a huge idea that we did. And I was like, why? I was like, I mean, it was an idea that was so difficult. Like the account guy ended up in a hospital at one point. I mean, it was just tough. It was,
Did he get beaten up by a green M&M?
that was Dennis Miller. but the point was, it was a very difficult, like the idea was cool, but executing it was a nightmare. I mean, it did need a case study because the logistics of how it always going to work and everything, it was hard. And this team wanted to be credited on it. And I said, well, what part of this did you do? And he was like, well, we were in the room in January when we came up with the idea. I said, look, I don't really care about credit. Like, I don't like, I've never cared about the credits and stuff. And sometimes I've wondered if that would hurt my career or not. And I'm here to say it didn't. But I was like, why would you want to put your name on something that you had so little to do with? And when people say, I said, you're going to look like Sigourney Weaver in Working Girl. Just don't do it. It's like, if you can tell the stories of how you made this and what you learned from it and what you would do again and what you wouldn't do again, I'll put your name on it. But if you were in the room when people were spitballing what we could possibly do, and that was the end of it, no, absolutely not. It's unfair to you. It's unfair to the work. It's unfair to the people.
Yeah, it's like people who rush the stage at award shows because they were in the room, Yeah.
But I've also had it happen the other way, which is I have a talented colleague and a lot of people are taking credit for work that I know he
did.
He did, and he did most of it.
Yeah.
And I said, how you feeling about it? And he goes, it's weird. And I said, yeah. And I love the Working Girl, Sigourney Weaver. I was like, you want to be the Melanie Griffith character. You want to be able to say, I saw this news clipping and I did this and I put it together. I said, because really all we're doing is gaining experience. And so if you didn't get anything out of making this, except your name on a credit sheet, you didn't really do it and you didn't learn. And that doesn't make you better. I mean, what makes you great is being in it and going, oh my God, we almost didn't do that. Or can you believe we got that shot? Or can you believe how we were here and then we ended up here and how cool was that? And that makes you better.
So what advice would you give to, the next generation of talent, when you're nurturing them to be able to progress in their career?
Over the years, as I've thought about what makes great work, a great career, at its simplest, I would say, make things where someone would say thank you. Like when you do something, not your client or, whatever, but just like, if someone met this in the world, would they say thank you? And that could be, you made me laugh. You made me think about something. You gave me some information that was really important. But enough people say thank you.
I love that.
To me, that's as easy as it gets. And then the other, looking back on my career, I'm like, build things. Don't just be a creator, be a builder. And I think it comes down to brands and brand assets. Be the person that did the Nike swoosh. Be the person, like, build things that last. And I mean, that gets to the mantra that we had at FCB, which is never finished. And I meant it about the people, but I also meant it about the ideas. What are you putting into this world that you can't see ending? It's all, and by the way, I've gone through the stages of grieving for FCB, and I,
well, I think of that year it won like agency
went
network
out on
of the year.
I mean, it went out on the highest, brightest note it could possibly go out on, and that's okay with me. And I was talking to somebody that I won't mention, but I was like, where's Ali and Gargano? Where's Grace and Rothschild? Where's, there are all these agencies that I loved when I was coming up, and they're gone. But you know what? Hopefully some of their DNA is absorbed into
has
another agency
and moved. Yeah.
And I don't think we can be that precious about that. I mean, I do believe in strong creative cultures. I absolutely believe that the stronger the creative culture, the more likely you are to be successful, because people want to be a part of things, clients and creatives. And forget creatives, the teams. I mean, the pride when I watch a team come together and know that they all believe in the same thing and they're going for the same thing. It's gotta feel so good. When you're dealing with individuals and you think about what is getting in the way of them moving forward, be creative on that. So like if you see someone who's scared, I'm nervous, I'm afraid to make this decision, what will help them make the decision better? So when I saw on M&Ms, when I saw the young people being terrified of Paul and what Paul was going to think of them and what Paul was going to buy, we changed the system.
Changed the process,
so that they didn't have to be as scared.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I think that you look at the culture, you look at who you're dealing with and what's their problem. Like one time it was a I told a CMO, and this is the truth, is I said, you want me to be involved with your business day to day. The truth is, I'm not going to give it the time and attention your ECD is.
Yeah.
Your ECD is going to live and breathe and whatever. And I said, and if they feel like I'm the last stop, I will tell you that when I thought I had a boss above me that was watching everything, I did not as well.
Yeah.
When I was pretty much the person who could say yes and no. And I said, so what I said, the day-to-day meetings I will not be in.
Yeah.
I said, if I show up in a meeting, something is either really bad or you're getting ready to buy something. Because if I'm showing up, it means that I care that much.
Either way, get your checkbook out.
Yeah, exactly. And I said, but what we will do, and I said, what I'll promise you is that I will know what's going into the meeting. And after the meeting, if you want to call me and talk about it, I'm here and we'll have a nice chat. And then let's go out to dinner once a quarter and just talk about where you are, how you're feeling. And then I'm kind of neutral.
Yeah.
But that was for him.
Yeah.
You know, so I think I think one of the things that we're all looking for is like, well, what's the one note I have to play?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, every single individual is slightly different. And if you can figure out how to make them their best self.
But that's brilliant, you know. I think that's brilliant. Not everybody has that, you know, more people have a cookie cutter mentality, I think. And then what you're doing is treating people like humans and looking at how to help them shine and how to help them shine so that your team shines, you know.
Well, I have to give credit to my ECD of 2 decades, which was this guy, Charlie Meismer, who I could just write a book about him because he's one of the most wonderful, wild, crazy characters. I mean, he's what if you've never been in this business, you're like, oh yeah, that's a nice
guy.
but when he left his keys to me, which was also the keys to his office, and which is a whole nother story. But I was like, Charlie, can you give me any advice? And that's exactly the advice he gave me. And he said, if I tell you did a good job at 10 in the morning, you'll be here till 10 at night, proving that you deserve that compliment. He said, if I tell Jamie over there that he did a good job this morning, he'll be in the bar at noon saying he's amazing.
Yeah, he's out.
And it was just in one little piece of storytelling, it guided me for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
And it's not what I need. It's, can I figure out what this person needs to be the best they can be?
Susan, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for your time.